Welcome, my name is Martin Skibris. I am the owner of the Mandevilla Function Centre here in Sydney. I am an executive chef by background, and I'm also I'm an Australian Maltese chef. I'm a 5-star chef. We've done a lot of cooking. My background is A&A Hotel Sydney, the Hyatt in Sydney, the Millennium in Sydney, the Swiss Grand Hotel in Sydney. All these properties are all 5-star properties and cuisines. Today we're going to be going into a little bit of village cooking, which are very, very rare for anybody to find. You won't find it in any restaurant, in any hotel, anywhere here in Australia, because these recipes are basically from generation to generation, passed down from mother to son or mother to daughter, all the way down. A lot of these recipes which I'm showing you today will be or shown to me and taught to me by my grandmothers, my aunties, and along those sort of cuisines. So we do things like, fenekbit, which is cooked stuffed, which is rabbit in a stew. We do a timpana, which is like a baked macaroni wrapped in puff pastry with chicken livers in it. We do pish spat, which is a traditional fish from around the Maltese islands, which is a swordfish with a nice, beautiful caper sauce. And we also do the tortas as well, which it's everybody's favourite. Today we're going to be cooking to you my famous fennek in a little bit of nice red wine and garlic, which we call fenekbit, which is rabbit stew. First of all, this is our rabbit, which is a nice white rabbit, and now all our rabbits that we use here are basically farmed rabbits. So they're nice, they're non-fatty rabbits, and always try to make sure that the rabbit has a nice shine to it and it's not dull. First of all, I'm just going to cut it up into a few different sections so it's easier for me to fry and work with. What I tend to do first is cut from the leg back end. And rabbit sometimes could be a pretty a hard bone piece of meat. What I tend to do first, I cut the legs, which is the two on the back, and then I cut the two smaller pieces from the front. Then I go through the rib cage, I open it up, and I cut that into smaller pieces. Be careful with it. Like I said, rabbit is a pretty hard piece of meat to cut. Cut through the rib cages. That's it. Now what I do with that, I just put that into a bowl. Actually, this one I'm just going to trim down a little bit because it's just a bit too big. It makes it easier to cook with when it's in smaller pieces. Cooks quicker and it's a lot nicer. Those flavours of the garlic and red wine will get right into it. So there's my roughly about 15 to 20 pieces of rabbit, and that's just out of like a 1.2 kilo rabbit. What we do is I use a nice Cabernet Sauvignon red wine. I mix a little bit over the rabbit so that can marinate into it. I add a teaspoon of garlic, a good teaspoon of garlic, and I also add some fresh oregano, right out of my own little herb garden. That's what we do with that. I just grab my thongs, give that a little bit of a stir, just like so. So all those flavours will soak into the meat, and you get the garlic and the oregano going through. So we just let that sit down for about an hour. and then then we'll fry that off. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do the sauce part of the rabbit. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to chop up some white onion, roughly about a 150 gram piece of onion, and I'll just chop that so everyone can see. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a rough chop onion. Once again, this is village cooking. You know, there's no, look, this has got to be like this or it's got to be like that. Very rough. Alright, so what we do, put that in there. I just grab my bowl and we just put the onions into it. And what we're going to do, we're just going to go over to the fry pan. I use olive oil to fry and cook it with everything I do. And I try and use depending on if it's a salad, we use an extra virgin olive oil. When it's frying, I use a light virgin olive oil. Okay. So what we're going to add is basically, or fry off, is a teaspoon of garlic to start off with. We let that flavour and just saute out that it gets a little bit of colour going through it. See how the colour is starting to go through? Then we add our onions. We fry that off as well. And we just let for the onions to get nice and tender and with a little bit of colour. Not too much colour, once again, it's going to be cooked later in the oven in the stufat. If you notice, it's just starting to get a bit of colour. Now to that, I'm going to add roughly about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. About 400 grams of peeled tomatoes. We'll just give that a little bit of a stir. This process will take roughly about 5 to 8 minutes. It's not a long process, very quick to do. Once again, it's very, very simple. We add about a cup of red wine, about a cup of water. We give that a stir and we basically put it on simmer that it cooks really nice and slowly. Now with any cooking that we do, we always add, and don't forget, is always add some salt and you add pepper. Salt and pepper is always added basically to taste. Everybody's salts and pepper taste a lot different. So taste your food, always taste it. The other thing is, because we're using a tomato and tomatoes are pretty acidy, we always add a little bit of sugar, roughly about a pinch or so of sugar to knock that acid back. That's about it. We just let that simmer nice and slowly, and while that's simmering, we'll get the other fry pan up and going, and what we'll do is we'll fry off our rabbit, which has been soaking and marinating in that beautiful, it's just beautiful. That nice aroma starting to come through. A little bit of light virgin olive oil to fry. You'll find that in Malta and in Gozo, in the islands around the Mediterranean, they all use olive oil. They love it. They don't use things like canola oils or sunflower oils. It's not what they're used to. So we just let that heat up a little bit. That's it. And we basically put the pieces of our rabbit into the fry pan. let it fry off to get a little bit of colour. Now while that's frying off, we also add a little bit more salt and pepper to the rabbit itself so the flavours will come out of the rabbit. You'll find that the rabbit will tend to be very, very falling off the bone. It just smells. See how it's just starting to get a little bit of colour on the rabbit? That's more than enough, because once again it's going to be cooked a lot more in the oven. By us sealing it, it's basically we're locking in the juices into the rabbit itself, and what we're doing is we're not allowing that that liquid and that marinade from the garlic and wine to escape the rabbit. We're sealing it into it. Okay, we just take that off. And what we're going to do here, we just spread out all our nice beautiful white rabbit. Okay, that it's all evened out, and so there's no big chunks in any corners of the dish. Into that sauce that is simmering away, we're just going to add 2 to 3 bay leaves, and I'm also going to add what the Maltese do, and you would only learn this by going around the villages in Malta, that they, with their rabbit, they add like a half a teaspoon of curry, and that, I would say, it comes from the old English background, that, you know, like Malta was run by the English for basically 200 years. So there's a bit of different cuisines and influences on the Maltese way of cooking. While that's simmering just over there, I'm just going to grab our potatoes. Roughly, I've got some peeled potatoes there, about 150 grams worth. I'm just going to chop them into smaller pieces so we can put them in with our rabbits. And by us cutting them smaller, they cook a lot quicker as well than the big chunks. You'll find in Malta, a lot of the people in Malta do cook with potatoes and tomatoes and garlic. All right, all we've got to do now is add our sauce to the top. And that's finished. About 100 grams worth of green peas. Maltese love cooking with the peas. Just on the top. And basically, I'm just going to cover it up with some alfoil and basically just stick it into the oven. Now when we put it into the oven, we're looking at about 220 degrees for roughly about 30 to 35 minutes. When it comes out, it'll be nice and tender, and I'll show you exactly what I mean when it comes out of the oven. So let's check on our rabbit. It's just about there. Let's go to the oven. Our 35 minutes is up. Close that off. Put it aside. Let's check. Oh, look at that. It's absolutely beautiful. And the smells which are coming through. This is traditional village cooking that you would never see anywhere else. Okay, let me just grab and give it the ultimate taste test. What you do, we put a little bit of, when you're serving it up, some potato, which in Maltese they say patot al forn. Little bit of rabbit on the top. And when you serve, you try and serve, you know, with a piece of the saddle and a piece of the leg. That's it. Let's grab another piece of that leg. Oh, look at that. And it's already breaking up. You can tell that it's so tender because it's just falling off the bone. I'll just put that to the side. Just wipe the plate where I've spilt. We put a little bit of garnish, and in our case we're just using a little bit of parsley. That's it. And now for the ultimate test, let's test it out. And I like absolutely beautiful. You have to try this with either, I would recommend a nice glass of red wine, because this will be absolutely beautiful. Let's crack it open. Bon appetit. Beautiful.